My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask you for pardon of my sins and grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. Today we are burying our beloved Holy Father Pope Francis in Rome on the eve of Divine Mercy Sunday, which happens to be the same vigil on which Pope Saint John Paul II died in 2005, 20 years ago. I think God is speaking to us through that nice coincidence and maybe pointing us to something that was so striking in the papacy of Pope Francis, and that was his call to mercy. And part of that mercy, I think, was his call to all of us Christians to go to the peripheries, as he said. He wrote this during his papacy. The Church is called to come out of herself and to go to the peripheries, not only geographically, but also the existential peripheries, the mystery of sin, of pain, of injustice, of ignorance and indifference to religion, of intellectual currents and of all misery. Well, in today's Gospel, as it so happens, we see Christ himself encouraging us to go out to the whole world. And 3 of the people, at least, if not more, who appear in the Gospel have been very weak. And God chooses them, perhaps not even despite of their weakness, but even because of their weakness. The Gospel runs like this. Having risen in the morning of the first day of the week, Jesus appeared first to Mary of Magdala, from whom he had cast out 7 devils. She then went to those who had been his companions, and were mourning and in tears, and told them, but they did not believe her when they heard her say that he was alive and she had seen him. After this, he showed himself under another form to 2 of them, as they were on their way into the country. These went back and told the others, who did not believe them either. Lastly, he showed himself to the 11 themselves while they were at table. He reproached them for their incredulity and obstinacy, because they had refused to believe those who had seen him after he had risen. And he said to them, go out to the whole world, proclaim the good news to all creation. Well, look at those characters, those wonderful characters who appear in today's Gospel. Mary of Magdala, and it mentions specifically from whom he had cast out 7 devils. She had been a very weak woman, and now she is commonly referred to as the apostle of the apostles, because she's the first one to go and preach the gospel, and in this case to the apostles themselves, not that they accepted very well. And she changed because she met Christ. Then the other 2, these 2 who were on their way into the country, Cleophas and his companion, as St. Luke tells us. Well, we know too that they were on their way into the country because they were simply running away from Jerusalem and running away from what they thought was a great failure. They too changed radically because they met you, Lord. And finally, the 11 apostles, who Jesus upbraids for their incredulity and obstinacy. They're not believing anybody. Neither Mary of Magdala nor the 2 disciples who come back from their way to Emmaus. So we see there are no supermen or superwomen here. They're just like us. And yet Jesus says to them, says to the 11, go out to the whole world and proclaim the good news to all creation. This is known as the apostolic mandate, which is a command, but also when you have a mandate to do something, you have authority. And so you, Lord, give to the 11, but also to all your disciples, all the baptized. That's me and each one of us praying this morning. We have this apostolic mandate. Go out to the whole world. And Pope Francis, we trust from heaven, encourages us too to go out to the peripheries. Pope Francis also said, we are asked to obey his call to go forth from our own comfort zone in order to reach all the peripheries in need of the light of the gospel. And he's saying it very clearly. We are slightly trapped in our comfort zone. We're afraid, perhaps, but perhaps more than fear of being martyred or something, which is not likely to happen. We're just comfortable. It's very comfortable not saying anything, or maybe not saying anything to a friend, or encouraging them to maybe get back to confession or something. It's just comfortable. So Christ doesn't need supermen. He needs just men and women, young and old, who will do something which is a little bit uncomfortable, and to do it with kindness. I came across a nice example in the life of an Irish Jesuit, thinking of Pope Francis, a great Jesuit. This man, his name was Father Willie Doyle, who was a chaplain in the British Army in World War I. Earlier in his life as a priest, he was stationed in London. And at one point, he was walking along the street, and he saw two prostitutes. And he said to them, in a kind way, he said, "Ladies, go home. Don't offend Jesus." And he walked on. The women, all they knew was that he was a mission priest, but that was the last he thought of them. But years later, Father Willie, he was back in Dublin, and his superior and the Jesuits called him to his office and asked him to do the following. He was to go to England to speak to some lady who had been arrested and who was about to be executed. Of course, he obeyed his superior, got the boat and train from Dublin to London. And when he arrived, he discovered that the woman that he was to speak to was one of these two ladies who had been out on the street that night, whom he had said to, "Ladies, go home, don't offend Jesus." And it turned out that his words and his manner of saying them had made such an impression on her that, facing execution, I don't know what her crime was, but she was facing execution, and she asked to see him. She remembered this priest. She found out who it was, giving just the information that he was a mission priest nearby to this street and so on. And they worked out who it was, that it was Father Willie Doyle, who was quite well known, in fact. And so before her execution, he baptized her and said Mass for her in her prison cell. So very beautiful. And it's a lovely example of going out to the peripheries, going out of a comfort zone in a very simple way. It would have been much more comfortable for Father Willie Doyle just to walk on, maybe just to say a prayer, which would have been good, but he does more than that. He says something just a little bit uncomfortable. "Ladies, go home. Don't offend Jesus." With that, he wins this beautiful conversion of this lady, and who must have died very, very happily, having been baptized and having had Mass and received our Lord. So Jesus, may I and all of us heed the call of the late Pope Francis, whom you welcomed home last Monday, that most important call to go out to the souls on the peripheries, to bring them your warmth and your light, remembering that we have a mandate, a command, an authority to do so. I give you thanks, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask you for help to put them into effect. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.